Well, next we have a really different kind of build along. This is Father Ron Walters with Paul Egret's card model design of a service station. Father Ron, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, this is part 4. We're going to do the roof, the gas island, and the driveway. I began construction of the roof by inverting the building and tracing its edges onto a piece of serial cardboard. I added 2 scale feet to the overhang to the tracing after squaring the tracing up. I measured the halfway point from front to back and scored that line in order to bend it in half for the ridge of the roof. I added 2 pieces of 1/8-inch square basswood to stiffen the roof, and I layered 4 layers of cereal box cardboard and 1 layer of a thinner cardboard into a stack so that I could create the gas island. You can see the gas island in the upper left hand of the screen. I don't know whether my cursor is showing or not, but it's up here in the upper left hand corner. I drilled 3 holes in the island after I cut it, used Paul's drawing to make sure that I got the exact size of the island, and drilled 3 holes in it and used the point of 3 toothpicks to act as locating pins for the posts that are going to hold the roof up. I used Tootsie Roll Pop. You can see the Tootsie Roll Pop in the center of the screen. And I used the sticks from that to create the 3 posts. I also used some 3 layers of the cardboard to create the core of the gas pumps, which you can see right underneath the gas island. And I curved the top because the Phillips 66 gas pumps have a curved top to them. So you can see the curved tops on here. I used a sanding stick to curve the top. I put them all on the painter's tape so that I could base coat them. I shaped them. I mounted all these shapes onto the painter's tape, and then the underside of the roof and the pieces I primed with gray primer. I turned the roof over and used flat primer black on the top of it. And the reason I did that is so that once I put the roofing material on the roof, if there were any gaps in the course of gluing it down, you wouldn't see the cereal box printing on the top. While that paint dried, I worked with Inkscape to edit and resize the Phillips 66 gas pumps that I downloaded from Google Images. When I was growing up, there were 2 gas pumps at our local Phillips 66 station. One was regular and one was ethyl. And you can see the ethyl on the right and the regular on the left in this picture. I had to measure Paul's drawings to find out how tall the gas pump would be. And I took off about 5 millimeters of the gas pump for the globes that are going to fit on top of these. You'll notice that the ethyl one on the right is kind of a square pump and doesn't have the same globe. But earlier models of the ethyl, which I found online, did have a globe on the top that said ethyl. And I'll show those in a few minutes. I did this, I made actually 2 copies of each of them so that I would have a front and a back. In case in gluing all of these things together that there might be a problem, I would have at least one side that would face away from the viewer, one side facing the viewer, so that the bad side could go to the back. I made actually 3 copies of each of these. And you can see the 2 sets here, but I made 3 sets of these. One that would be on the bottom, a second that I would cut out just the area where you would tell how much gasoline you're putting in your car. And I glued that piece to a piece of clear plastic. And then the top, I would cut that out. And so there were 3 layers to the gas pump. And I made those so that they could be glued onto the core. I painted, after the primer dried, I painted with flat black acrylic paint around the edges of the pumps. The fascia of the pumps were the colored pieces, but outside edges were all black. Then I turned to the globe itself. You can see on the right here, either the bigger pieces or the smaller ones. You can see the ethyl globe and the regular 66 globes. And I had to print these up several times to get the globe the right size. After doing that, I cut it out and then glued it to a piece of index card, and then cut those out and glued them back to make the globe. Now, these globes won't be lighted, but you'll be able to see the ethyl and the regular when you put them together. Here's a picture of the island that's been spray painted gray. I've cut lines into it to indicate the expansion joints in the island. And I've mounted the 3 Tootsie Roll Pop sticks onto the island. Before I mounted them, I painted them with some acrylic silver that I had. I don't remember the brand of it, I'm sorry. But I make sure that they look like they were steel, at least, or aluminum, one of the 2. You can see that the gas pumps there now show some degree of a 3D effect in having that top layer cut out where the amount of gas shows. And there's actually a piece of plastic in there, and it shines if you hold it up to the light in the right way. In this particular picture, you can see the glass globes have just been glued. You can see the white tacky glue underneath it hadn't dried yet, but they're mounted on top of the 2 gas pumps. I then turned to the roof, and on the underside of the roof, I painted the edges of the roof all around the edge with the same color of antique white that I used on the building itself, so that if anyone picks it up and turns it over, you don't see the gray, but you see the same color of paint as is on the building. I then turned to the style of roof covering, and I decided to use the tar paper strips. I used 3 different colors. I used a black, a light gray, and a dark gray. Now, when you see the end of the model, you're going to see that it hasn't been weathered yet. I haven't finished the weathering on the roof, but I figured that perhaps the owner of this, Rudy is his name, that he would want at least the roof to be maintained well, so there'd be no rust on the tools that he would need to change tires and do other kind of work in the garage. So I made sure that the roof was well maintained. I cut the strips into 3/8 inch wide strips to use on the roof, and I sort of jumbled them all together so that when I would pick one up, it wouldn't be the same as the one before necessarily. And I used just plain old Elmer's glue smeared with my finger onto the cardboard subroof. In this particular photo, you can see the different styles of roof covering. And I also found an old coffee stirrer. You can see that white and red and white stirrer that you sometimes get when you buy coffee. And I dipped it in my flat black paint so that at least on the inside of the top, there would be paint. I did have to paint the inside. This is 2 pieces. I cut it in half to use for the 2 spaces on the roof. One is the vent that you need to have in a bathroom, or you can't flush the toilet. It overflows if you don't have that air behind the water. And the other one is for the heater in the business area of the garage. So again, this has not been weathered. Finally, we have the completed building. You can see I did kind of do a template, another piece of cereal box cardboard that I cut 8-foot space expansion joints into to sort of act as a template in case this gets mounted on someone's layout. I used a little bit of painter's tape rolled up underneath the island to secure the island in place while the glue dried as I mounted it onto the underside of the roof, the filling area. And you can see both sides. I did add also a vent for the garage area. You would want some way to vent the gasoline or the fumes from working on a car. You sometimes have to start the engine to time the belts and such. And so you need to make sure the garage door is open, but in the winter time, that might be a bit of a trick. So I decided to put a vent in above the bathrooms so that the garage could be vented, all that gas could be vented. I did use some India ink and alcohol to age the building itself. So you can see a little bit of aging there. Afterwards, I removed the painter's tape, and you can actually lift the building off the template. You can use the template then to and resize the template as you need to mount it on your layout. And that sort of brings us to the end of the build. There's the completed building. You see the vents are leaning a bit because the glue was still wet and hadn't dried yet, but they're now vertical. They're not leaning. So, any questions?
Outstanding model, Father. Just a beautiful, beautiful model.
Father Ron, I thought you and Dave did an absolutely wonderful job on that model.
Well, thank you, Paul.
And showing both sides and showing both ways of making it, I think was very helpful. So people can actually combine the 2 methods. Now, if I can only get you to show people how to use Inkscape.
Well, no, we've already solved that. Sometime probably in March of next year, Father Ron and Greg Cassidy are going to team up, and they're going to show us all how to use that Inkscape free software.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. I will be very attentive on that, hopefully.
Father Ron, I think it came out great, but I do have one question.
Sure.
Tell us all, how hard is it to eat a Tootsie Roll Pop when you don't have the stick anymore?
It's not easy, believe me.
Oh, it figures. Father Ron, thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Glad to help.